What's up, everybody? Welcome to Bios3 Raw TV. So, every day, just about every day, my girlfriend goes to work, Kari. I don't know how she finds them. She seems to find these interesting articles or videos or whatever when she's supposed to be working, but whatever. And they wind up making their way to my emails. And next thing you know, I'm getting pulled into these articles and stuff, and I start doing a little more research on my own and looking into other things, and a lot of these times these things pan out and turn out to be some really cool stuff. And today she had sent me one about the Winter Olympics that's coming up. So the Winter Olympics is coming up, and there's a Moscow lab that's in charge of the drug testing, and they have been suspended due to the fact that they need to be up to par with their testing standards and etc. whatever, all this stuff. And there's a lab, they talk about the World Anti-Doping Agency, and there's a lab in Brazil that has been, had some issues, and they're worried about the World Cup and the testing for that. And when it comes full circle, at the end of this article, it says that this Moscow lab is going to gain, or what's going to be spent on drug testing, is $50 billion for the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. $50 billion. Are you freaking kidding me? All right? I don't even know how to put that into context as to how much money that is for doping control, okay? And you know how many of those athletes are going to pass that test? 90% of those athletes that are doping are going to pass that test when $50 billion was spent trying to catch them. Here's the kicker. Why am I talking about the doping and the Olympics and all this stuff? Because over and over again we get these half natties, fake natties, whatever the fuck you want to call them. And these guys that swear up and down that they're natural and they're drug tested, like the Muscle Mania and this one and that one, all this shit that they're drug tested. And they don't even spend like $5,000 on testing. You're trying to tell me that these guys are not beating the test when it's barely a test? When 90% of the people are beating the $50 billion test? Now, yes, there's more at stake with the bigger test, the Olympics, etc. But if they can figure out how to beat those tests, you don't think that these people can figure out how to beat the ones here locally and regionally and nationally? Oh, you got to be kidding me. Not only do they know how to beat the tests, and they are beating the tests, but a lot of times it's a polygraph test. And the polygraph test is open to interpretation. They give control questions. So those control questions are then the guideline as to whether or not the polygraph tester decides whether they're telling the truth or not. So as long as they get the reading that, if someone is nervous during those readings and they're just as nervous during the test, they'll pass. They're banking on the fact that someone is not nervous answering the test questions, they'll get the real response, and then they will all of a sudden become nervous and scared and fail the test later on due to those test questions and how the reactions occur. What they're also not banking on is the fact that somebody is depleted as fuck for one of these competitions and can most of the time give a shit less about what's going on around them than if it doesn't have to do with food. You know what I mean? Let's face facts. If you're so depleted for a show and you're down to like 3% body fat, you don't even give a shit what's on TV. You don't give a shit that someone stole your car out in front of your house. You don't give a shit that friggin' you fell down the stairs and tore your pants and your ass is hanging out. You just don't care. So when you hit that polygraph test, it's a lot different than someone who may have possibly just murdered someone or, who knows what the case may be. It's a lot different. So just be aware, guys. I hear over and over again like, oh, well, so-and-so got tested and he's natural. Or so-and-so took a polygraph test, he's natural. You could pass these things in your sleep, and obviously there was just a thing in the news about Mike Tyson when he was fighting, using something called like the Wizinator or the Wizard, whatever the hell it was. It was like a fake prosthetic penis that had fake urine in it, or someone else's urine, and he beat the boxing commission's drug test over and over again. Not only was he on steroids, he was doing cocaine before he went out to fight. That gave him that aggressive, crazy aggressive tendencies that he had to go nuts and hit so hard. He was doped up on those, and he was all over the news in the world, and he was one of the most famous people ever in boxing. He still passed the test. He He still found a way, and no one would have ever known if he hadn't come out and admitted it. He said that, this is how we did it. This is what I did. So just be aware, guys. It doesn't fucking matter whether somebody's natural or not. If they're performing at a high level and you enjoy watching them, fuck it. Cool. If you want to idolize them, that's on you if you want to hold them as an idol. But bottom line is, you can't tell nowadays whether someone's natural or not based on a test or a polygraph test or a piss test. Blood test, maybe. If they're handing out blood tests, there's something different that, you could probably bank on that. But the money that's involved with that is not going to happen in these local, regional, and national competitions. So, tread lightly on who you defend for being natural, because more than likely, there's a 50-50 shot that person ain't natty. Bios3training@gmail.com. Leave comments down below, but don't fight. www.bios3training.com is the blog, and where the no polygraph, no P-test bicep, and we're out.